U.S. has added 14 million new jobs since the Great Recession. A good start. But too many families see the special interests gaining the upper hand in Washington, while paychecks don't go far enough. If you work hard, your paycheck should show it. You earn Social Security. It should be there when you retire. And you shouldn't have to go broke to afford college. I'm Katie McGinty, and I approve this message because it's your turn.
Because qualifications count more than money.
Because my vote is earned, not bought.
Because grassroots power can stop big money.
Because Jamie has always been a progressive.
Because literally, Jamie Raskin wrote the book on campaign finance reform.
And Jamie's the only candidate who's done more than talk.
Because he's the only one who's actually written major progressive laws.
To pass the Green Maryland Act.
To ban military-style assault weapons in Maryland.
Ban the death penalty.
Pass equal pay for women.
Marriage equality for all.
Because no other candidate has that kind of record.
And it's not even close.
Because Jamie Raskin is one of the coolest, smartest, kindest, most passionate candidates I've ever seen.
Because my vote is not for sale.
And we need the kind of progressive that money can't buy.
Because Jamie Raskin represents us.
States, including Idaho, given the opportunity to expand Medicaid coverage for ideological reasons. Governors have sacrificed the health of millions of people throughout this country. That is wrong. Maybe a governor or ideology. I urge the legislature. Let me say a word or two about our campaign. As you know, when we began our campaign about 10 months ago, we were at 3% in the polls. We were about 70 points behind Secretary Clinton. We had no political organization, we had no money, and I dare say not a whole lot of people in Idaho knew who Bernie Sanders was. But we have come a long way in 10 months. Most of them by double-digit margins. We have received 849 delegates to the Democratic National. And we have a path toward victory that goes right through Iowa. Now, one of the interesting aspects of this campaign is that we have won a significant majority of the votes of young people. And in fact, by young, when you get older, being young gets older too. Vigorous young man of 65, wow. And we have won in most of the elections, people 50 years of age or younger, and we have just a study that came out yesterday that said we have received more votes from people under 30 than Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump combined. That we are bringing forth the notion that it is too late for establishment politics and establishment economics, that we need some bold ideas. This is what the future of America is about. Governors and senators and the entire establishment. And I think what people are saying, that it is too late right now for establishment politics or establishment economics. We need to rethink some fundamentals about the way this country is run. Radical in American politics, we are telling the truth. And the truth, as you all know, is not always pleasant. It's not something that you always want to hear. But the reality is that we can't go forward as a that today we are living under a corrupt campaign finance system that is democracy is not a complicated idea. What democracy means is that you have a vote, and you have a vote, you want to vote against me, fine, you want to vote for me, that's great. That is what democracy is about. Democracy is not about Wall Street and billionaires spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Democracy is not about candidates spending half of their lives begging for campaign funds from the richest people in this country. That is not democracy. Democracy is not about the Koch brothers, the second wealthiest family in America, and a handful of other billionaires spending $900 million on this campaign cycle to elect candidates who represent the wealthy and the powerful. That is not democracy, that is oligarchy. When Republican governors all across this country are engaged in massive efforts toward voter suppression, that is not democracy. That is cowardly politics. So they make it harder for poor people, or people of color, or older people, or students to participate in the political process. And I say to those governors, if you do not have the guts to run in a free and fair democratic election, get out of politics, get another job. One of our goals as Americans is to empower our fellow Americans to understand that they are powerful people if they choose to exercise the power that they have in a democracy.
We need you guys to try to stand in front of this line if you can, please. Thanks.
When we began this campaign, all of the pundits and the experts said, they said, Bernie, the only way you can run a strong national campaign is to get a super PAC. We agreed with you. PAC, we're going to go ask the middle class and working families for help. And to say that if you want us to transform this country, to have a government that works for all of us, we need your help. And you know what's happened? And this is really unbelievable. What has happened in the last 10 months is we have received over 5 million individual campaign contributions. Because it shows that you can, in fact, despite the poisoned campaign finance system we have, you can run a campaign not being dependent on Wall Street or the fossil fuel industry or the drug companies or political. Secretary Clinton has chosen to go another route in terms of raising money. She has several super PACs, and the largest one recently reported that they raised $25 million from special interests, including $15 million from Wall Street.
Sorry, we need you to try to step in front of this line if you can. If you can find a spot, thanks.
$25,000 a speech. Now, what I have said is that if you're going to get paid $225,000 for a speech, it must be an extraordinarily brilliant speech.
Not to that view!
It must be a speech which is mind-blowing, which addresses and solves many of the crises facing humanity. And if it is such a great speech, I think all of the American people deserve the opportunity to read it. Secretary Clinton has also said that she is prepared to make her transcripts public if other candidates do the same. So let me announce today, right here in Idaho, I am prepared to make all of my Wall Street speeches available to the public. Idaho is a conservative state. Although it does appear that not everybody is conservative. What I want to say, in all seriousness, to the conservative people of Idaho, the conservative people in America, what the media tries to do is kind of divide us up and suggest that this country is hopelessly divided, everybody hates everybody else. I honestly don't believe that's true. Obviously, there are some real divisions. All right? I, for example, am very strongly pro-choice. I think those very personal decisions must be made by a woman and her family and her doctor, not by by the government. That the vast majority of conservatives in Idaho do not believe that our current campaign finance law makes sense. Whether you are a conservative or a progressive, most people do not believe that democracy is about billionaires buying elections. I would be willing to believe, to guess, that a vast majority of conservatives in Idaho do not believe that America should have a rigged economy in which the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. I think that conservatives as well as progressives understand that we have a rigged economy when so few have so much, so many have so little. Most conservatives do not believe it makes sense that today, when dad is out working incredibly long hours, mom is out working long hours, kids are working long hours, that 58% of all new income generated is going to the top 1%. I would be willing to bet that conservatives as well as progressives think that there is something wrong when the wealthiest family in this country, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth as one family than the bottom 40% of the American people. And I think almost all of us could agree that it is a pretty absurd situation when you have the wealthiest family in America paying wages to their employees that are so low that many of these employees are forced to go on Medicaid, food stamps, and subsidized housing. This is what a rigged economy is about. Who is paying taxes for those food stamps and Medicaid and subsidized housing? So on behalf of the wealthiest family in America, I want to thank you for subsidizing them and for subsidizing their business. So I say to the Walton family, get off of progressives that there is something wrong in this country when women are making 79 cents on the dollar to pay less than men for doing the same job. That is called sexism, and together I think all of you have probably been reading or seeing on TV the tragedy in Flint, Michigan. And I was there a few weeks ago talking to some of the families, and it literally is beyond belief that in America in the year 2016, children are being poisoned by a disastrous water system which has enormous amounts of lead in it. But it is not just Flint, Michigan. There are hundreds of other communities in this country which have troubled water systems. In my state of Vermont, it's not water per se, it is bridges which are in massive needs of repair, roads that are rampant with potholes. We have a rail system falling further and further behind other countries. Levees and dams need enormous amount of work. We used to have the cutting-edge infrastructure in the world. That is no longer the case. And I would suggest that conservatives would agree with progressives that we have got to invest in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure and creating
Yes, it does. It makes it more popular the more points I get on Periscope. But you can only give 500 hearts at a time, and then you have to completely exit out of the app. As a result of the greed, the recklessness, and the illegal behavior of Wall Street, this country was plunged into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Millions of people lost their jobs, they lost their homes, they lost their life savings. And then Congress came along and, against my vote, bailed out Wall Street. Now, one of the reasons that Wall Street was bailed out is because the banks were too big to fail. In other words, if they went under, they would take half of our national economy with them. But what people don't know, or many people don't know today, is that 3 out of the 4 largest banks that were bailed out are bigger today than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. People don't know that the 6 largest banks have assets of over $10 trillion, equivalent to 58% of the GDP of America. They issue 2/3 of the credit cards and 1/3 of the mortgages. 6 financial institutions. I think that most Americans, regardless of their political views, understand that is too much power in the hands of too few people. We've got to put it back.
it'll keep counting your hearts no matter what, but it'll only give me 500 of those hearts on my profile.
People across the political spectrum understand that it is insane that we have corporations in this country who make billions of dollars a year in profit, stash their profits in the Cayman Islands and in other tax havens, and end up paying not one nickel in federal income tax. So if I have my way, what we are going to do is end those loopholes, collect $100 billion a year, invest it in the infrastructure. Conservatives and progressives, no doubt about that. But on many fundamental economic issues, campaign finance reform, whether or not we have a rigged economy, there is a lot more consensus than many believe. Is that yes, we have a corrupt campaign finance system that's undermining our
Something you guys need to do. You need to have a bucket and have every put $1 in it.
To put what?
Put $1 in it.
Oh, that would be a good idea.
Goes to the top 1%. But something else is going on. And that is we have a broken criminal justice system. Don't just look at the world the way corporate media wants you to look at it. Ask yourselves hard questions. Question in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, which is what we are today. Why do we have more people in jail than any other country? Why do we have more people in jail than China, a communist authoritarian country that does not tolerate dissent terribly well and has 4 times more people than we have? We got 2.2 million people in jail. We're spending $80 billion a year to lock those people up. So in my view, we need in a very big way to reform a broken criminal justice system. Is that if a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. I have worked as a former mayor and as a congressman and as a senator with the police departments all over my state, all over this country. And the vast, overwhelming majority of police officers are honest, hardworking, and are asked to do a very It is not easy to be a police officer today, but like any other public official, a police officer must be held accountable. Second of all, we have got to take a hard look at the so-called war on drugs. Over the last 30 years, millions of Americans have received rests alongside of heroin as a Schedule I drug. Now, people can argue about the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but everybody here knows that heroin is a killer drug doing massive harm in this country today. That takes marijuana out of the federal control system. States have the right to legalize, or not. 4 states, as you know, have legalized marijuana, but that is the state's decision. But in my view, possession of marijuana should not be a federal crime. Justice, and when we talk about drugs, understand this, as I'm sure you all do. In my state of Vermont, neighboring New Hampshire, all over this country, we have an epidemic of heroin addiction. People are dying every single day from overdosing. Opiate addiction is a national crisis as well. What we need to understand is that addiction and substance abuse is not a criminal issue, it's a health issue. And that is why we need a revolution in mental health in this country. That healthcare, including mental healthcare, is available to all people. On another issue, which is gaining more and more support. 100 years ago, the very brave, foresighted people fought for public education in this country. And what they said, pretty radical idea about that. What they said is that all children should have the opportunity to get an education from 1st grade to 12th grade, regardless of their income. That was a pretty radical idea. Before that, what you had is the children of the wealthy were getting a great education. The children of the working class of the poor were working on farms or in factories. And families said, no, that's not right. Every kid in this country is entitled to a quality public education. But as all of you know, in the last 30, 50 years, the world has changed. Our economy has changed. Technology has changed the world. We live now in a highly competitive global economy, and we need to make sure that our people have the best education possible to compete in that global economy. It's not good enough to simply be talking about 1st grade through 12th grade. We have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Some people say this is a radical idea. It is not a radical idea. The world has changed in many respects. A college degree today is equivalent to what a high school degree was 50 years ago. 50 years ago, if you had a high school degree, you know what? You were in pretty good shape. You would go out and get a good message on. By and large, that is not the case today. And let me tell you something else. Other countries around the world understand this. In Germany, college is free. Scandinavia, college is free. And here's something that some of you may not know. 50 years ago in the United States of America, most of the great public universities and colleges were virtually tuition-free right here in America. Student debt. How many people here are dealing with student debt? Now, again, what I would ask of you, think outside of the box. Think outside of the status quo. Don't take for granted that what happens is normal. Ask yourself this question. Everybody in America understands how important education is. There's no debate about that. And throughout young people's lives, what they are told is, you got to go out and get the best education you possibly can. It's good for you, it's good for the country. And then people come up to me and they say, Bernie, why is it that when I graduate college, I'm $30,000, $50,000 in debt? Why am I being punished for getting an education? And those people, by the millions, are absolutely right. And that is why, as part of our legislation, we are going to give people with student debt the opportunity to refinance that debt at the lowest interest rates they can find. People say people aren't willing to think outside of the box. People who do not choose to think big, they say, well, Bernie, that's you want to make public colleges and universities tuition-free, you want to lower student debt, that's an expensive proposition. They're right, it is. About $70 billion a year is a lot of money. How are you going to pay for it? I will tell you how you pay for it. We pay for it by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
That's how you pay for it.
Remember, why is it a radical idea to say that young people in this country have a right to get all of the education they need without going into debt, but it was not a radical idea for the Congress to bail out the crooks on Wall Street? Now it is Wall Street's time to help the middle class. Let me touch on another issue. Often I am asked, which issue is the most important issue? And you can't give an answer to that because all of these issues are mutually important. And here is an issue that is not only important to our country, but to the entire world. I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment. I have talked to scientists all over our country and all over the world. The debate is over. Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. Climate change is already doing devastating harm in our country and around the world. And here is what the scientists also tell us, and it is What they tell us is if we do not get our act together in the very near future, if we do not transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy, this planet, by the end of this century, could be between 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. And you may think that's not a whole lot. That is an unbelievable change in the planet's climate. And what that will mean, according to the scientists, more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more destruction and acidification of our oceans, and all that means. It will mean rising sea levels and the flooding of coastal regions. It will mean more international conflict as people around the world fight over limited natural resources. Now, I want to again throw out an issue to you, which the media doesn't talk about much, but we need to understand. How does it happen when the scientific community is virtually unanimous on this issue that not one Republican candidate for president is willing to acknowledge the truth about climate change? And the answer to that is not that Republicans can't read. They read just like, and I'll tell you something, this is interesting. I sit on a number of committees, and all the committees, Democrats and Republicans. When we talk about health care, Republicans are there. When we talk about diabetes, when we talk about Alzheimer's, when we talk about cancer, they are interested in these issues. They ask as good questions as anybody else does. But when it comes to climate change, suddenly they cannot tell the truth. And this gets back to a point I made earlier. That is what a corrupt campaign finance system is about. Because if the Republicans came here to Idaho Falls and said, you know what, I've talked to the scientists. This climate change is real. We got to do something. On that day, that candidate would lose his campaign funding from the Koch brothers and the fossil fuel industry. Now, let's stop fracking. That's what I said. And one of the differences between my Democratic opponent and myself is I am very clear. I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming that fracking has caused enormous problems for water systems all over this country. We can't afford to do that. We got a potential water crisis in this country, and we've got to do everything that we can to keep our water clean. Now, let me say a word or two about the rather unusual situation in the Republican Party. Let me say a word or two about my good friend Donald Trump. Just kidding, he's not my good friend. In virtually every poll that has come out in the last several months, we defeat Donald Trump, and we defeat him big time.
the only good candidate. I never do that because A, nobody believes that stuff, and B, it's just not the right thing to do. But I'm going to make an exception for it. So I think it is important to talk about Donald Trump who stands, we think, a reasonable chance of becoming the Republican nominee. And I'm going to tell you why I think Trump will never be elected president of the United States. For a start, and I got to tell you, I just don't do this often. I don't make these attacks against opponents. But the truth is that Donald Trump is a pathological liar. The most progressive member of the U.S. Senate. I have friends who are conservatives. They believe what they believe. Don't mean to say they are liars. They believe what they believe. That's called democracy. But this is what Politico is a newspaper in D.C. And this is what they said. They said that Trump, and I quote, made more than 5 dozen statements deemed mischaracterizations, exaggerations, or simply false, equating to roughly 1 misstatement every 5 minutes on average. There is another group out there, it's called PolitiFact, and their job is to check up on politicians. And they're not always right, by the way, but this is their job. Is a politician saying something that's accurate or not? PolitiFact looked at 112 statements made by Donald Trump. They rated 78% of these statements false, mostly false, or what they call pants on fire. Really false. And again, this is not, people can disagree about ideas, but you cannot have a president whom the American people cannot trust when he speaks. Let me just give you a few examples. And we can go on for many hours. I'm going to make it short. A few examples of some of the outrageous lies that Trump has stated. He stated that he watched, quote, thousands and thousands, end of quote, of Muslims cheering in New Jersey when the World Trade Center collapsed on 9/11. Well, he saw it on television. The only problem is nobody else in America saw it on television because it never was on television. It is a lie. Donald Trump said that, quote, the Mexican government forces drug dealers and criminals into this country. Last month, Donald Trump said he, quote, didn't know anything about David Duke, the former leader of the Ku Klux Klan, who recently endorsed Trump. PolitiFact rated that a pants on fire lie. Trump has criticized Duke's racist views at least 4 times in the past. Of course he knew David Duke. 2011, Trump claimed that President Obama's grandmother said he was born in Kenya. That's a lie. President Obama's grandmother said that he was born in Hawaii. On and on it goes. But it goes beyond that. The truth is that the American people will not elect a president who insults Mexicans and all of Latin America.
were saying is that what they were trying to do is delegitimize the presidency of Barack Obama by saying that he was not eligible to be born in America. And that is an awful and dangerous thing to do. Now, I have found it very interesting on the campaign trail. You know, the president's father was born in Kenya. My father was born in Poland. Nobody has asked me for my birth certificate. It might have something to do with the color of my skin. Everybody in this room knows that real change never takes place from the top on down. It always takes place from the bottom down. They couldn't get the education they wanted. They couldn't do the work they wanted to get the jobs they wanted. But what happened is women and their male allies stood up and fought back and said that women will not be treated as second-class citizens. We're very courageous people, taking on a whole lot of future. The gay community and the straight allies said that in America, people have the right to love whoever they want. Today, we are in a pivotal moment in history. We are in a moment, in my view, where we have got to look out around this country and understand that the status quo is not working. It needs fundamental change. Please don't tell me that the United States has to be the only major country on earth that doesn't provide guaranteed paid family leave. Don't tell me that the United States has to be the only major country that doesn't guarantee health care to all. Don't tell me that young people have to go deeply into debt because they wanted a decent education. The United States should have more income and wealth inequality than any other country, while at the same time we have the highest rate of childhood poverty. We can change America, but the only way we change it is when millions of people stand up and fight back.
Thank you very much for joining me in this Periscope in Idaho Falls, Idaho.
Hi, Tim. Bye. Good to see you.
Please share on Twitter, Facebook, and show your support for Bernie so we can beat all these caucuses. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.